going to be a little bit controversial, really. So the question that I was set, and like a true academic, it's not the one that I want to address to start with. You know, how the finance sector and universities collaborate for mutual gain, because the question makes an assumption that you want to collaborate with us and we want to collaborate with you. And so I want to start by asking, could we, should we, and would we? And in doing that, I think it's really important for us to think about, what does collaboration actually mean? Universities are anchor institutions. The financial sector is an anchor institution. So what role do we play in collaboration? So we could collaborate and it could have absolutely no impact whatsoever. We could collaborate because it's the right thing to do. Universities and business schools in particular cry out to do work and research that's meaningful and engaging. And I often argue that you can have engagement without impact. You can't have impact without real engagement. And in answering the question, should we, would we, could we, I want to focus on three key themes. I want to talk about collaboration as a process of informing. I want to talk about collaboration as a process of influencing. And I want to talk about collaboration as a process of creating impact. So I am going to make a strong case that there are huge gains to be had if we collaborate. And why would we do that? Well, because universities provide innovative thought leadership. Part of a university's mission is to do engaging research, research that makes a difference to the industries that it works with. And Andy's going to talk to you in more practical terms, some of the ways that we kind of do that. But actually thought leadership and innovations are overused words. They sound great, don't they? And if collaboration was that simple, why are we not doing it? And if we do it, why do we not do it well? I thought the earlier panel discussion was really, really interesting because it talked about both opportunities and it talked about challenges. And often collaboration is a challenging process. So it's really important when we think about thought leadership and we think about innovation, we also think about interdisciplinarity, because that's what universities bring to the table that I think is really important for the financial sector. So a university's mission is to be curious, it is to educate, it is to inform. But that isn't enough, because if we did all of that and it made no difference to you as institutions on topics or issues that you are grappling with, not now, but in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time. So it's really important that when we talk about collaboration, we're bold, we're persuasive, but equally important, we're proactive. So why do it? Well, because we have to put that evidence to work. How do we know the research that we do makes a difference if we don't have you as our collaborative partners? If you're not both informing that research, but also informing the big questions about the challenges that each of you faces in your own organisations, well, then the research is meaningless. We have to put that knowledge to work. We have to create knowledge hubs to be able to evidence the work that we do, both locally and internationally. But collaboration also has economic purposes, it has political purposes, it has social benefit, and it has cultural benefits. We don't often talk about industry collaborations, about the role that we have in communities, the role that we play in our cities, the role that we play in our towns. So I am making a compelling case that if we are going to make a difference, if we are going to be fit and ready and purposeful, then we need to kind of tackle collaboration in new ways with new thinking. We have to address the concerns that industry presents to us, but we don't do that in isolation. I'm often accused by my students of living in, universities. You live in your red brick ivory towers. Well, let me reassure you, I joined academia, but prior to that I worked in industry. So I'm passionate about the linkages and the synergies of what we bring. And in a business school, how can you not do research that educates the next generation of leaders? How can we not do research that informs policy and informs practice? So my challenge back to you is, can you afford not to engage? So the question isn't should we or how could we? The question has to be, can you afford not to? So what does that actually then look like in practice? And I'm going to hand you over to my colleague Andy Newman, who's going to give you some concrete examples of the way that collaboration and engagement works for us.
Cool. Thanks, Kieran. So as John says, I'm at the coalface. So the drugs are really good. That's how I look so young, apparently. So I just want to tell you a little bit about a couple of different examples of how we've done this at Birmingham and how engaging with universities has helped different partners and clients that we work with. So this is just a little diagram which says what business engagement means to us. So for us as a university, we have a team of 18 of us who work in the function that I look after, which is going out there and dealing with businesses like yourselves and helping you get in touch with the right people internally and then sort of managing those partnerships. It looks different across every different sector. So I have colleagues who run engineering, I have colleagues who run the medical side, I work in social sciences, arts and humanities and life sciences, so you can imagine how diverse that can be, going from biosciences to American history all in one day. But the principles are all the same. So we're here to be an enabler for you guys. We're here to help make sure that university is open for business. We basically try and help you do something that you couldn't do on your own, and that's when people like Kieran come in. I think the role that universities play, as Kieran kind of alluded to, is a trusted critical friend. I think you don't really get that from many other partners that you might work with. And the level of objective and deep insights is also something that we pride ourselves on. So what does collaboration look like? What do we mean? So we kind of split these into three different things. And all of these three things are what makes our strategic partnerships strong. So we have about 8-9 big strategic partners who we work with at the university. You've got everyone from GlaxoSmithKline through to KPMG, through to Business in the Community, through to Procter & Gamble. And then we have a number of other more sort of probably transactional relationships with other firms as well, which, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of firms there. But those big strategic partnerships look like this. They look like things that help people solve their people problems, which is where the skills side comes in. So at the moment, we're helping a lot of firms with their degree apprenticeships issue, or rather their apprenticeship levy issues around how to spend their apprenticeship levy and upskill their existing or potential new workforce through running degree apprenticeships. We work on the research side as well, helping businesses solve strategic problems, putting you with academics who are looking at the particular things that are challenging your industry. So things like blockchain and stuff like that were all mentioned earlier. And we help people solve their influencing issues. So these are more policy kind of side of things where we partner with firms to influence policy debates or media debates or any kind of debates out there where you could do with the level of objectivity that an academic institution can provide. So I just wanted to briefly touch on 4 of our kind of key strategic partners, I suppose. Lloyds Banking Group. So what we've done Lloyds have been our bank as a university since the university was opened over 100 years ago. So we've always had a long relationship with them. But within the last 6 months, we've recently just opened the Lloyds Banking Group Centre for Responsible Business, which is based out of our business school. And that's a £2.5 million investment by Lloyds looking at what it means to be a responsible business. And it's not just looking at banking, it's looking at the whole number of different sectors. So we're talking to people like Veolia about this, we're talking to Wilmot Dixon about this in construction, we're talking to a number of different firms, and getting down to the nitty-gritty of responsible business. And actually just half of the time what we're doing is helping to shed a light on the good stuff that's already going on. KPMG is probably one of our most widespread touch points for a big strategic partner. We do everything through delivering the NHS Leadership Academy with them, through to running an undergraduate programme for them, and also working with the West Midlands Combined Authority on economic development work and building economic development tools. Rolls-Royce, one of our oldest partners really, and that's a big R&D partnership, as you'd imagine. We've built a large joint facility with them just on the outskirts of Coventry, looking at high temperature research. Things with Rolls-Royce that they always tell us is if our R&D projects don't work with them, it's not about losing money, it's about planes falling out of the sky. So that kind of sheds an interesting light on our work with them. And BAE Systems, who are in the news today, but we work with BAE in a similar way to Rolls on R&D. But the big thing about our work with BAE is helping them get access to funds for R&D that they wouldn't be able to get hold of on their own. So looking at things like the industrial strategy with them at the moment, and looking at how we get hold of industrial strategy funds from the government, where universities and industry need to partner together. And then finally, this is just a few of our particular kind of different insights and different strengths at the university. These are actually hot off the press. We're sponsoring we want to sponsor the CBI conference, which is just over the road at the O2 on the 6th of November. And we just pulled this together for that. So we're looking at everything from how to be a fairer business, that comes into the responsible business work. We've just had a massive £80 million investment from government on rail. We do a lot of work on cyber security, which is actually not its own particular icon there, but runs through a lot of these things, especially in areas like quantum and extreme robotics. These just highlight, you guys will be working with clients in a number of different sectors. These are the kind of insights that we provide to different people. So we never see business engagement as one particular thing for one sector, but you learn things from others. And people, especially in financial services with different clients in different places, we provide a lot of different information to a lot of different people. So that's just what business engagement and why we collaborate and where we've seen it work well in other places and in the financial sector. So I will leave it there. But
thank you very much. Thank you, Kieran. Thank you, Andy. There's some great examples there, and it's interesting when you look across the financial services area that could we have some really great examples which emanate to solve some of the problems that we've got. So before just taking some questions, I'd just like to, from our other panel members, Simon, for example, you're sitting there at the heart of the city, lots of graduates, postgraduates. What's your kind of view? It'd be interesting to get what your view is of the institutions and how potentially they engage with you.
Okay, so to add constructively to the presentation we've just seen, the bit that I would offer is that we also produce your employees, the next generation. Those who don't ask, why should I push a button? They just push it. The political element of the news today is about equality, diversity, and frankly, when I look at an inner city university in the post-92 sector rather than the Russell Group, I'm also, the emphasis that I have as the Dean is to produce employment-ready graduates who will be able to present with, especially the sort of demographic I deal with, sufficient social capital, sufficient training and business capital. That's at at undergraduate level. At postgraduate level, it's that segue between short courses, between postgraduate degrees, which likely will benefit an industry, an institution, by acceleration of a person's understanding and then their contribution back. So my understanding also is because of the churn in our industry and the way that government is seeing the measure of higher education's effectiveness towards the economy, and at the moment it is bluntly the economy, it's what are you doing to the student and transposing them into work, and you will hear a great deal of discussion about Vice-Chancellor's pay, about the financial contribution that universities make and the usefulness of it. There's a whole raft of funding changes, student loan changes coming, and all the time the tick that we hear in the background is, are you producing a graduate at whatever level that can actually contribute positively? And so I will stop by your initial thing. Can we afford not to engage? Can you afford not to engage with us? Well, actually, I would tip it 60-40. We can't afford not to engage with you because we are measured as an effective industry by government in ways that if we don't see that we're producing good graduates that are useful to you, then actually, frankly, you're under threat through things like closing of departments because they're no good.
Thank you, Simon. So, Rob, should we? Could we? How could we? from a man who has to drive things from the coalface.
So I think from financial services, I think we're very good at taking graduates in. I think we're all equally very good at moulding them to exactly how we want them. So regardless of whatever training you've done or performed on them or conditioned them, I think they very soon fall into this is the way that we do our financial services. And I think, you know, if I look back over certainly my career, I haven't actually come across many instances where we've reached out to universities for research and help and assistance, because it's all very valid. And equally, I haven't seen the other way, you know, to combine university life and experience with practicalities of working. Do I think it's necessary? I absolutely think it's necessary, because if you look at the financial services today, we all know, you know, Steve talked about it today, the need for transformation is probably the greatest it's ever been that I can remember. And quite frankly, those that don't transform will not survive in the longer term, that's very clear. But how we get that balance of, you know, because we need the smart new thinking, you know, if you look even, you know, with a few exceptions, the people around this room, we're all of a certain age and experience. We need to change. You know, one of the biggest challenges I have in my own organisation is, you know, we all talk about digitalisation now and blockchain and all these wonderful AI and all these lovely things, but it's getting the thinking changed in your mindset. And I think we could do far more by engaging with academia. But, you know, I don't know what the magic answer is, because I do feel that, you know, whilst we get great grads in and we're good at moulding them, they don't have the practical experience either. So we need to somehow find a balance, and I don't know what that is.
George, John, how can we resolve this one? I didn't take your point there, Rob. We young people in the room do find it difficult to adapt at times. But George, if you've got some,
do you mean speaking as a young person? I'll speak
as one young person to another.
One thing we've realised over the years is that the UK professional bodies, all of them, the lawyers, the accountants, the brokers like us lot, used to have very strong links with academia. Then that kind of declined for a generation, but now it's coming back again. Let me just give you some examples, if I may, of things that we as one body have done in recent weeks and are doing. We've, for instance, worked closely with something called the Cambridge International Symposium on Economic Crime, which is an event at Jesus College every year. Last month, its 35th year, we had about 1,600 people, mostly against crime, one or two people slightly on the dodgy side, but mostly against it, but learning from academics, but also with lots of judges, regulators, bankers, stockbrokers, security people, and so on. So a great two-way process. A week is possibly too long for an event, but one survives and one's liver recovers after a bit. Next week in Edinburgh, for instance, we're doing something at the university with Professor John Kay. I'm sure all of you will have read him in the Financial Times. John's going to be talking about whether markets should be changing as the world moves on, looking at his report he did 5 years ago for British government on short-termism, and giving us an insight into his new book coming out next spring on uncertainty. And I'll come back to that in a minute. The month after that, next month, November, we're doing an event again in Edinburgh at the university with Stephen Bird, a very senior man at Citi. He's CEO, I've got this right, Nigel, CEO of retail banking globally, and CEO of Asia Pac. So we're delighted and honoured to have him there. Again, with a number of academics. Edinburgh's got the biggest informatics department in Europe, and it's also got certainly the biggest in Britain, probably the biggest in Europe, Innovation Centre for Technology. So we're going to bring all these things, banking, academia and technology together. I mentioned earlier John Kay's book on uncertainty. We're doing, or helping on, a major project being run by the Open University in Britain and the University of Regensburg in Germany, which is looking at how young people go about learning in conditions of uncertainty. We've worked closely with the Open University in the past on a project on work and learning at the boundaries of knowledge. In other words, how when you reach your mid-20s, you suddenly hit problems you haven't come across before, How do you find out how to handle them? How do you structure your own personal development to make sure you're on fast track to management? That project's been run by someone called Alison Littlejohn, my cousin with the brains, who's academic director of Open University and professor of learning technology there. If you'd like to get involved in that, love to hear about it. All we need is some young people to speak to by the two researchers, one in UK and one in Germany, who are working on it. So yes, we love working with academia, and Nigel mentioned earlier the work that we've been doing, developing with Nigel, with John, with Rob, with Gary and others in ISITC, and we look forward to bringing that all together into much greater exploitation of knowledge on both sides and participation. And Nigel and I have just agreed that someone who better remain unnamed will be playing the bagpipes after your 25th of January event, Burns Supper Day. So Michael Manelli, if you're watching, get your bagpipes ready. John, thank you.
Thank you very much, George.
I mean, one of the things we've done with the ISITC is absolutely, really embrace what you've just described on the desk, right? So, from our perspective, we actually pay for the membership for the university partners who would like to join us. And to Rob's point, it's all very well to mould someone after they've had a great experience at university or college or wherever they've been, but it's also nice to have them as an individual as well. We like to see that individuality shine through, and certainly from our perspective, we'd love to see that and welcome that as we move forward.
I think for me, the key in terms of what you said was just so important. Collaboration works when it isn't just about extending the reach of a young undergraduate or a particular problem or a particular project. It's when those different partners work collectively together. It's something that I call engaged scholarship. And by engaged scholarship, I mean when you work on a problem or an issue that involves the policymakers, the practitioners, the academics, the industries, but they work collectively together. So it's not something that is done to you or for you, it's done in the kind of collective. And that is really, really powerful. And the second thing I think we really do have to think about is extending our reach. And by extending our reach is not just thinking about universities, and it's an important space in terms of graduate employment, but actually universities and particularly kind of business schools, in the way that you've articulated, can help by working on, real issues of importance, not something that you're grappling with today, but, internationally, things that are going to be happening in 5 years' time, and working on those big, bold issues. And I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed about being at Birmingham is I know nothing about quantum physics, but I'm working with the top professor, Kai Bong, in looking at supply chains and small firms and enterprise, because actually the work that he does, as he says, you need to kind of commercialise. You've got to bring it out to market. That would never have happened 5 years ago. So there is something actually about universities crossing boundaries, but also industry and industry partnerships working. And what makes that relationship so powerful is that we have the scientists working with the social scientists, working with the policymakers, government ministers, and those businesses and those industries. And when that happens, you just know it's going to be research that makes a difference, not just to the industries, but to the very communities we reside in. And that's what I mean about our economic outputs as well as our social outputs.
You've had some input there from the panel. I want to open it up now, and I want you all to be very bold and get your hands up and ask some questions. So I think we have one certainly from the centre there.
Yeah, we do an enormous amount of stuff with various universities, and the biggest single problem that we come across all the time is IP. In that it's almost impossible to engage with you because everything has got to be then owned by the university. And we just say from a FinTech point of view, forget it. We're not giving our IP. We ask for an answer to a specific question.
Good point.
And you may or may not get the right answer. That's for us to manage, etc. But dealing with the IP is a real challenge. It's quite obviously you want to keep the IP because that's your benefit, that's your stock in trade. But for us, it's our commercial lifeblood. So it's not something you've usefully reached a consensus about yet.
Simon, you?
I'll pick your university.
Sorry?
Pick your university. The
Well, we work with
difficulty.
Bristol, and we work with Oxford, and we work with Cambridge, and we work with LSE, and we work with the Sorbonne. So
There we
we've got
are.
a reasonable spread there.
But they're all Russell Group,
Well, all right, okay.
so you're not picking 145 different. We're all autonomous, and that's
Yeah, well,
that's the
I've got a
point.
spread. I mean, give me one that's going to help me with advanced cryptography and quantum computing that isn't in the Russell Group. I'll happily use them.
I'll take the point, but to broaden it with IP, I think particularly each university is itself autonomous. We are not driven by a sector set of rules, and so the commerciality and the competitiveness that we feel between institutions is never going to help you. Whether your spread is either sufficiently diverse or the opportunity perhaps to commit to one that will then trust you and work with you more. But that sort of internal inertia from the outside, from that side of the desk, we're a really complicated, really quite immature industry, and many of the internal inertias are things that then block your effective.
Most academic work appears to be collaborative, so you've got to spread yourself around different places.
No, quite. But would you not say that? I mean, most academics would fall on the sword of IP and who owns it as well. From within,
Yeah.
we share the frustration. There is that administrative and commercial block.
But I think we're getting better at it, so I'm going to hand it back to you.
Yeah, so we've had the same, and we had a long conversation with Mark Jeffries, who runs academic liaison for Vols, and the way that we are now doing things at Birmingham, and I think more universities are being forced this way, is having large framework agreements covering IP with people like your regular, like your GSKs and your Rolls Royces, where IP is set up front, and there's now an acceptance, certainly at our place, that on some projects IP all belongs to industry. On others, you'll benefit from it, and there's a much more of a kind of an understanding of that kind of almost quid pro quo, I suppose. But I think we're getting better. I think there are still challenges, and I think what's happening now, and when we talk about being an immature industry, I think the team that I work in, we've been in place 3.5 years, and most of us came from industry, and I think more universities are going that way, whether they call it business engagement, business development, I don't know. And now we've got more of an industry or commercial voice within the institution. We're seeing a change in attitudes to IP. Feel free to come and talk to us afterwards, because we might be able to sort you out. But yeah, I do take your point, and I think that's something that's held people back.
But it's also, when we talk about industry changing, we also have to think ourselves as a business, and we're changing. And so what I would say is sometimes those perceptions are definitely real, and they happen. But actually, I think as universities, we're getting smarter and more thoughtful about our own practices and what it means to engage with it. So in the same way I was asking you those bold questions, when I took over as academic lead for engagement, I was questioning, our own infrastructure to say, are we ready to do this kind of work? And if we're not, we shouldn't be doing it.
Can I pass it over to you? There, once again, Simon, you're in the hot seat a bit. How terrible has it been? Don't say anything bad.
Well, no, I'm reminded of asking the farmer how to get to Dublin, and he'll tell me, but don't start from here. We are very different institutions between Birmingham and London Met. Mine is teaching focused in a city, one of widening access and participation, which we then bolt research onto, and almost it's the reverse for Birmingham. So we're not in homogeny. Now, why does it work for me? It works for me because you're not expecting to work with me on that 150 million European research budget. Rather, the focus is on the immersive learning of students and access to my academic members of staff. So in a sense, why does it work? It works because there are many touch points, it's the right scale, and let's not beat around the bush. Our location is also ideal. From there, it can be extremely flexible, and we've yet to meet a challenge that can't be overcome by a cup of coffee and a cake. But it's that flexibility, the modality of it. It's not a behemoth institution that has, how many do you have? 18 people in your section?
Yeah.
Wow, I have 2. But there's the difference, perhaps, between, I'm not going to be going to Rolls Royce in any time in the near future and saying, you are our key partner by way of this grant. So the bespoke and the customizable, but its scale and the relative matching, I suppose, of my need to yours. That's why it works. Doesn't mean, by the way, that it's completely exclusive. I will talk to anybody.
I've heard that.
I talk to you.
Talk to me for stuff. Any questions? So who else is going to be bold with a question here? I'm sure you've got something seething. You're going to have a question.
I have a question. I mean, one of the things that struck me from what you showed earlier, Andy, is you've got some great collaborations when you've got real technical research. You know, if it doesn't get done properly, a plane falls out of the sky.
Yeah.
The question I've got is, how do you keep students motivated to solve financial service problems, which actually, we are all over digitalisation, fintech. If we could introduce fintech tomorrow, we'd do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
What we need help with is unwinding the spaghetti that we've done over the last 30 years. And what I don't see is I see everyone rushing to the latest fintech or the latest, but not enough help in solving the practical problems of collapsing down what we've done. Now, you could argue it's not your problem to do, but that's the only way that banks can successfully integrate new fintech and new technologies.
It's absolutely our problem as much as it is yours. And so we do that in a number of ways. We do that by ensuring people like you are part of our course design. We have advisory boards as part of, so any new module or any existing module always comes up for kind of, review and revalidation. It's part of just our own good practice. And more and more and more, quite rightly, the challenge is having graduates that are fit for purpose. And I completely agree in terms of, whether it's going to...
Which is why they're not productive, because
Absolutely.
they come in and we mould them exactly to what's there today.
Yeah. And so what we need is, when we talk about engagement, is more of that. Yeah. We are good at it. We could get even better at it in terms of ensuring that the modules that we produce for the financial sector. I mean, Andy talked about, a collaboration that we have with KPMG in terms of an undergraduate programme. But they have been very influential in the design of that, So
but come on, I mean, we're not industry's training camp.
No,
you still read for a degree. There is still that luxury of thought and of learning.
Yeah.
I will produce an open-minded, adaptable product for you then to shape to your own needs. Otherwise, you are going to silo a graduate and make them not fit for role. So,
I totally understand that.
So to bridge that, the sort of key skills, I'll address those key skills as your needs in the way that is described. But I will defend still that a student must be able to graduate having followed a passion, an interest, etc. I do think, though, that we should also be aware of the connectivity of education. I was in a meeting the other day with SIPs, and sell procurement to a 16-year-old. Yeah. Blimey, Bill, you'll not. Possibly at postgraduate level. And so there is part of it. If one plays acronym bingo here, do you actually have 16-year-olds that understand what their A-level choices are going to be to influence them through university to end up at your doorstep wanting to be employed? That's where we get a bit fuzzy, I'm afraid, or I will anyway, because the academic background doesn't necessarily matter because of the sophistication of your training. Yeah. You can take a graduate from wherever and train them. Please be aware too of the change that is happening at universities from a government measurement point of view. You will see we have something called DELI, which is the Destination of Higher Education Leavers. It's an index that measures the number of students that are in work, their starting salary, and frankly, whether it's a graduate job or not. And it's becoming quite meaningless because most universities now are hitting 95% plus. We're therefore changing it into what is euphemistically called DELI 2, which is a longer longitudinal survey, not 6 months, but after 18 months and then after 10 years, based on somebody's national insurance number, so that you will be able to determine from a university the graduate has gone on to do what sort of job, what sort of pay scale they're on, and their impact and influence. And we're just on the moment of cusp. It's about to change next year. So the efficacy of a university to produce the student that is mouldable, trainable, etc., is likely to extend that their sustainable success in their career just up to their 30s now. That's a challenge which we recognise. Don't think we've necessarily addressed it fully yet. We just know that it's coming, and that will provide a real energy into us coming back to you as industry to say, we are not competing perhaps in business as effectively as we were. What now do you need, and how do we change it? So it becomes an external driver because of a bit of an irritating government policy change.
I think the other thing to mention is not to look beyond business schools as well. So just a quick straw poll: has everyone in this room got a degree? If everyone's got a degree, how many people would class themselves as having a business and management or an economics degree? A show of hands. How many people have got an arts degree? How many people have got an engineering degree? So you see
And science.
And non-engineering STEM, let's say. But the mix of people is really important, and that's where we've got. So we have things that happen at undergraduate level where we have arts and humanities students doing a project with different firms at the end of their first or second year. 1 week project. The key partners we work with that: Deutsche Bank, KPMG, Lloyds. And there's no one in there who's a typical, what you would class an arts employer. And the other thing that we've done as well, which I think more universities will go this way, is we set up a secondary school. So we're the first university in the country to have our own secondary school. And the big thing about a secondary school is it's built on character and values-based education, which is what we have a particular strength with in our research. It's a 90-person secondary school from 11 to 16. At sixth form, it becomes quite selective. But what we have a number of enrichment parts of that curriculum where employers come in and deliver stuff with students. But it's not career stuff necessarily. It might be someone like an RBS or someone coming in and taking them to go to a cultural venue in the city or something like that. So from our point of view, it works because it's enriching the students' curriculum. It's non-traditional subjects. From an employer point of view, you're getting a look at an early look, let's say, at people who think differently, and you're getting the stuff that rubs off as well.
The elephant in our room, as I uncurl my toes at your secondary school, is apprenticeships.
Yeah.
I'd like to kind of move this forward a little bit to about some of the big things that the industry is facing, like machine learning, artificial intelligence, which is going to have a profound effect over the next 5 to 10 years. So have we got any questions around how academia can kind of help with those? Or?
So I've seen quite a few courses emerge, master's courses in fintechs around universities around the United Kingdom. I had a look into these for myself. I'm just an undergraduate, so I was looking into doing a master's degree, and I found they were aimed more at business students to kind of convert them into fintech. How do you feel these fit in with this merging of finance and technology?
Who would like to?
Can I chip in a thought there? We had a conversation about that about a month ago in Moscow, of all slightly odd places, between Strathclyde University, which has got, and I'm not just saying this because I'm Scottish, it's got the first masters, or launched the first masters in fintech in Britain, and it certainly is geared towards general business folk, explaining to them a bit about what coding is about, why IP matters, Peter's point earlier, and a number of other issues there. But in the financial university, which is the biggest university in Russia, with 120,000 undergraduates, they've got a master's in fintech, which is very much about coding, about IP, about understanding how coding folk can relate to bankers who want to own the IP very quickly after it's produced and so on. So I think it's a valid point you make, and I'll be corrected by colleagues here from academia, but I think there is a dearth of proper understanding of fintech in graduate courses right now, but I'm sure it's changing rapidly, and I'm sure it's changing in Birmingham and London.
I think my observation would be, that's a really lovely example of us putting on something that we think there is a market for, and we've then put a boundary around that market. And actually, what you're telling us as industry specialists is, look, we would really like to do that, but actually, the visibility and the profile that you give it wouldn't necessarily fit in. So when I talk about we have as much to learn from you as the knowledge and research that we bring, then that would be a really concrete example. So something we will take away is to kind of think in our own institution, actually, what are we doing? You know, and who is it actually kind of aimed for? And have we thought, and, you know, kind of beyond that, you know, as part of that? Because sometimes that won't have, the most obvious things are the things that we don't always kind of think of, whether it's in your industry or it's in our industry.
It's probably where industry bodies come in as well. I think you get, you know, things are market driven, right? But if you have a particular firm who comes and talks to us about designing a whole new program, that's a big question for the university as institutions that have been around for hundreds of years in some parts. It's a risky question for the university. If you have an industry body that comes to talk to you about that, that's a different question. Because you have the weight of the members behind you. So that's probably somewhere, like, going back to the point about how we've worked with industry bodies, and this comes back to what we're doing with people like Business in the Community membership body or Chamber of Commerce or CBI, those kind of organisations. That's probably where we need to think a bit smarter, is about how we work with institutions, like with industry bodies.
So I'll put my dean's hat on. I noticed Strathclyde's just stopped teaching Italian. Ooh, a university with no languages, goodness. The market drives it. Now, at postgraduate level, it's pretty easy to listen to industry's demands, see if there is sufficient business information to support the development of a course. That's going to take maybe 18 months. A master's course, financially to live, needs perhaps 20 master's students on it. That's tricky, because the timeline there is about 3 years. So already my academic cycle doesn't fit with your need and undoubtedly industry's need. And the economics may yet not work. There are ways around it, but there are always a dilution to the expectation that you described. So in my place now, I arrived to a cull of master's courses because, you know, you just can't run one on 5 students, however motivated they are. I will stop you working because you are expensive and I can't afford you. And that's why you wear, you know, a breastplate that says Dean on it, because you're getting shot at from front and back.
So, I mean, there's something else that we're actually working with George on, for example. When we looked at the courses, it's progressive, you know, and productive education, right, within the working environment. One of the areas we've noticed is that it's very much focused on the retail sector for training, right? So broadening that up. And we are willing to complement that with the institutional side of the business that we actually run. So the sales side, the sales side, and help George with his progression, right? That's one area that we would like to add to that program sheet.
You're right, it's certainly continuing professional development, very important here, especially in this fast-changing field where exams, even sort of simple vocational exams like ours, and certainly master's courses, are trying to catch up with a fast-moving industry. I think, to be fair to academics both here and in Russia and anywhere else, if I asked people in this room immediately to say in one sentence, what is fintech, we would hear hundreds of different words, because there is a lack of definition about what fintech is. We've just, between ourselves and the cameras, had a slight row in our magazine panel about an article written by a very distinguished journalist, a mate who knows what he's on about, where he has failed to define fintech. He says what it does, but not what it is. So I think the time will come when somebody, maybe someone in this room, will have defined fintech, and there'll be a master's program that suits you.
Well, that's one thing that we would like to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Just because we're now at time, I'd just like to say, yeah, well, we are going to do something as an industry body. We would like to set up, and this is where I welcome your input. We want to set up a kind of collaborative discussion or a discussion with a number of institutions about how we can, as ISITC, put together a mechanism or facilitate collaboration between a number of academic institutions and the industry. And we want to develop a format for that. We want to look at how we can maybe address some of the issues you've raised about IP, very valid issues. And we can put a framework together whereby we can facilitate that. And I really look, if you could perhaps get in touch with me afterwards, any of you who've got contacts there or within your organisations who we should speak to, please let me know. So just on that closing note, I'd just like to really thank the panel here. They've, you know, and Kieran and Andy have come down from Birmingham. It's been a shorter trip for Simon, but still a big trip.
I had to get up early this morning.
and both Rob and George. So perhaps you can put your hands together. Thank you for their contribution.